Hello, and welcome to part 3 of my series for Pride Month, where I'm drawing and talking about LGBTQ+ characters. This week, the portion of the community we're focusing on will be aromantic individuals and asexuals. And once again, there are huge spoilers ahead for every single character that I draw, so if you hear me mention a series or movie that you haven't seen and you don't want spoilers for, please be advised and just save this video for after you've seen it. Or if you'd prefer, you can just use the timestamps and skip that part. I hope you enjoy the video. The asexual and aromantic characters I decided to draw were Alastor from Hazbin Hotel, Peridot from Steven Universe, Alix from the Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Noir, Luffy from One Piece, and Saiki from the Disastrous Life of Saiki K. I decided to start this video out strong with an asexual character that's quite popular at the moment, Alastor from Hazbin Hotel. Hazbin Hotel is a story that follows the Princess of Hell, Charlie Morningstar, as she attempts to rehabilitate sinners in hopes that they can be allowed into heaven. This is because heaven decided that hell had an overpopulation problem, so they started coming to the realm once a year to slaughter sinners as a quick and violent fix for the issue. But Charlie genuinely believes that sinners can change for the better and that they deserve a chance to do so, and she wants to give them that chance. So she opens up a rehabilitation hotel called the Hazbin Hotel in hopes that she can save her people and fulfill her dreams. It's soon after she opens the hotel that she's offered help by a powerful demon who likely has sinister intentions behind the offer. And that demon is none other than Alastor. He's a charismatic but ill-intentioned man, and we don't know exactly why he offered to help Charlie yet, but it's easy to discern that he wants to use her for something, and he wants to shape and guide her in a way that favors whatever his final goals are. And as he said at the end of the season, he wants to be the one pulling all the strings, and Charlie might just be his meal ticket for that. But we're not here to analyze his suspicious actions or even his intentions. We're here to talk about his place in the LGBTQ+ community. Alastor is asexual, and it's even confirmed on screen, which is really rare. I feel like it's usually just kind of hinted at and then confirmed by the writers, or they have one of those fancy rings on their middle right finger. But with Al, it said right to our face. And I find it really funny that he doesn't seem to understand what it meant at all. And even back when he was initially confirmed to be ace, he was confused back then too, and honestly, the idea that he's so detached from any sexual attraction or interest and doesn't pay any mind to it, making him completely unaware of this, is just, it's really funny to me. Because it reminds me of before I knew I was ace, and it's such a subtle thing to see yourself in, but it's exactly why this type of representation is important in media, and it's just really unfortunate that there's not much of it. Anyway, on another note, I want to touch a bit on the ace Alastor versus aro ace Alastor debate. See, I'm actually a shipper at heart, and I love seeing romance unfold in different ways on screen. But when I watched the pilot of Hazbin years ago, I didn't see enough interactions to really ship anyone other than Shaggy because they were established. And I didn't really dive into the fandom too deeply back then either, so I was vaguely aware of some of the ships but not too connected to them, and eventually just forgot about them all. But then, the first season came out back in January, and I got really attached to all of the characters and the story really fast. I got a couple ships here and there, but Alastor is the character I don't really find myself shipping with anyone. I just felt like it was a bit out of character for him to allow himself a weakness like that, and I kind of thought he was aro ace anyway, so it was whatever, I was fine. Now, take a moment and imagine my surprise once I started breaching into the fandom again after years. And I see that Alastor is the most shipped character in all of Hazbin Hotel. Like, you've got Vox, Lucifer, Rosie, Charlie, Angel, Husk. Basically, imagine any character and they're probably shipped with Al. And I was so taken aback because my interpretation was clearly very different than others. But it was fine, and I even came to really enjoy Al and Rosie as platonic lovers, and even radio silence through some of the TikToks I was seeing. But one thing that remained consistent in the videos I was seeing, no matter what the ship, was there was always a few comments just hating on it because the commenter had interpreted Al as aromantic just like I did. And I've honestly seen a lot of discourse over whether or not these ships are okay or not. And that's because a lot of the fandom has come to an agreement of sorts that Alastor is aroace, so they think it's wrong to ship him with anyone else. But from what I've seen in my research for this video, VivZpop said that since it's not really plot relevant to Hazbin Hotel, she felt it was okay to keep his romantic orientation ambiguous for the sake of allowing viewers the freedom to headcanon their own ideas. So to some, he may be aroace, and to others, he's just ace. And because Viv intended for it to be up to interpretation as to not ruin anyone's fun, both of those are technically correct. So I just have one request. Next time you see someone shipping Alastor with someone, even if you don't ship it or you interpret him as aroace, take a step back and realize that your interpretation might just be different than theirs. It doesn't mean you have the right to harass people online, so just let people live their life and move on with yours. Anyway, Alastor isn't my top character in Hazbin, but I find him very interesting, and I'm excited to see where the show takes him, especially since we're supposed to be getting his and Vox's backstory next season, which is something that I was really curious about after my first watch through. But yeah, that's all for Hazbin in this video, so here's my drawing of Alastor. I hope you like it. The second character I drew was Peridot from Steven Universe, a story that follows a young boy named Steven as he learns about his powers and his place in a war started long before he was born. He's part of a group of rebellion aliens in this war called the Crystal Gems, and one of their very first antagonists is actually Peridot. She was originally a homeworld technician, and she came to Earth to scan and make sure no gems from the rebellion remained, as well as to do some research and a checkup on a weapon called the Cluster, a group of thousands of shattered gems that were forced to fuse. The Crystal Gems figure out what she's doing and try to stop her, but she evades them just long enough for her to escape. But months later, she returns to Earth with a Jasper to protect her and an informant named Lapis, and ends up capturing the entire Crystal Gem crew. They eventually escape, of course, and Peridot once again falls out of their clutches. But once they realize she's still on Earth, they go on a hunt for her, and they eventually manage to capture and bubble her. To keep a long story short, it's Steven who eventually ends up realizing that she's just scared, so he lets her out and ends up befriending her, which convinces her to switch sides. Now, although I adore her introductory character arc, and her joining the Crystal Gems is just done in such a fun way, putting this exposition aside, Peridot is a very special character to me because she was my only asexual representation growing up. And even though it wasn't on screen very much, sort of just implied through her reaction to fusion, honestly, I think I would defend asexual Peridot until the day I die. Like, I would die on that hill. Like, it's genuinely just so important to me. Because it's canon, but naturally there are some people that don't really like that, or they think it makes no sense, or that it gets in the way of their ship, so they don't like it, which, I get it. I loved Lapidot growing up, and I still do, because guess what? She's not aromantic, she's asexual. I don't know why people mix them together so often when they're so vastly different, but there's a lot of people that kind of assume when one's present, the other's present. So a lot of the time, it leads to problems down the line, because you can't ship Lapidot because Peridot is asexual. But that's just the thing. Asexual people experience romantic attraction. They can enter into a romantic relationship. And despite apparently common belief, relationships aren't always about doing the do. Like, there's so much more than that, and sex isn't necessary for a couple to be close or for them to make a relationship work. Because having sex isn't the only way that a couple can be intimate with one another. And Peridot doesn't need to become a fusion to be a couple. Just let people like what they like, as long as it's not hurting anyone, it's fine. Which might be a little redundant because I just said that for Alastor, but the point still stands. I don't know why there's always so much fight back for Arrow and Ace characters. It's insane. Anyway, moving on. I honestly just really love Peridot. She's such a good character, and I loved seeing her come out of her shell and learn more about the world around her, as well as unlearn all of the toxic ideals that the Diamonds force onto their people. Because she's one of the greatest examples in the show of the struggle that comes with spending your life with those ideals forced upon you, and then trying to better yourself once you realize they're wrong. It's not easy, it's messy and scary, and it's the whole point of Peridot's character arc. The next character I decided to draw was Alix from the Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Noir. This series follows two teens, Marinette and Adrien, as they transform into a superhero duo and fight to protect Paris. They become those heroes through the use of a Miraculous, an accessory that once worn by the user will grant them a connection to a small godly being called a Kwami, and it will allow them to wield their Kwami's power. They use these abilities to fend off the tirade of a supervillain who goes by the name of Hawkmoth. And they do all of this while balancing school, teen romance, teen drama, secret identities, and more. And speaking of secret identities, Marinette and Adrien have no idea that they're Ladybug and Cat Noir respectively. So they have no idea that they're in the exact same class. But still, throughout the series, they actually allow their classmates to don Miraculous of their own. And one of those classmates is Alix. She's a tomboyish and confident young girl that loves a good challenge and is a bit of a reckless daredevil. And she ends up with the Bunny Miraculous, and is granted the ability to jump through time. Which isn't really relevant to this video, but it is really cool. What's important here, though, is that Alix is canonically aromantic. And it's hardly shown on screen, but she shows absolutely no interest in romance when in relation to herself, and she's one of the only kids in her class that doesn't have a crush or a relationship at some point. She's a pretty common situation for Arrow and Ace characters where we don't really see that they're under the umbrella, we're kind of just told. An author or producer or something will confirm in some way that they're Arrow or Ace or otherwise, but that's as far as it goes. And I do understand it in a way, because it's really hard to show that a character is aromantic or asexual without them just saying it outright. But it kinda sucks that it's so rare for us to get on-screen confirmation. And I doubt we'll be seeing it anytime soon for Alix, because she's a side character. Either way though, I've always loved Alix as a character, so finding out that she's aromantic was actually really cool. Because as I said, it's not on screen, and since I don't use Twitter much, if at all, I miss these things. And a lot of others do too. Unfortunately, if you're not in the fandom pretty deep, and you don't follow the creators of your media, you're bound to miss background information like this. But it is what it is. I'm just glad I ended up stumbling across this information on my own, because I totally see it. Alix being aromantic makes perfect sense in a way I can't really explain, so you'll just have to trust me, but it's true. It just makes sense, I promise. Anyway, there was so little to say on this matter, since she's such a background character aside from like the 5 episodes where she's prominent. So sorry this section's probably pretty short. It was so hard to come up with what to say, which sucks because I really do love Alix's character and I wish there was more content to build off of, but there just isn't. Either way, I'm glad I got to draw her because her design's fun, and I'm also glad that I got to learn new stuff about her. So I hope you enjoyed. The third character I drew was Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece, a story that actually follows Luffy as he sails the sea in pursuit of his dream to be the king of the pirates. Along the way, he builds a crew and a family, and they face all sorts of danger, hardship, and excitement. They save people, they bring down corrupt governments, and they find their way in the world. And it's all in the name of adventure. Now, it's important to note that it hasn't actually been stated directly by Oda whether or not Luffy is canonically Arrow Ace. He just kind of implies that Luffy is Arrow Ace, and he does so in two ways. By both writing and describing Luffy in a way that's very Arrow Ace coded. In an SBS asking why Luffy reacted to one woman's body but not the other, Oda basically said that Luffy would be completely uninterested in a naked body and wouldn't react unless he was feeding off of someone else's energy to do so. Hi! Wanted to pause here and add something, because when I went back and read the SBS again, I noticed I made a small mistake. Oda actually said that Luffy was interested in the naked body, but that he wasn't entranced or captivated by it. Now, I don't want my words to be misconstrued here, so I just want to say two things. First, asexuality isn't black and white. It's a spectrum, and there are some asexual people that experience some sexual attraction. So saying that he's interested in a body doesn't remove the possibility of Luffy being ace. It simply moves him closer to that middle gray area of the spectrum. And based on his lack of reaction, it's safe to say he's closer to the asexual side than the sexual one. Second point, it's okay if you don't agree that he reads as Arrow Ace. He's not confirmed, and it's mostly up to interpretation in Luffy's case anyway, so it's honestly not that big of a deal. But that doesn't mean you can be a jerk to others just because they disagree with you. Just keep it to yourself and move on. And speaking of moving on, I actually had something else to add to this section of the video, because I found another SBS that was relevant to what we're talking about. And excitingly, Oda indirectly talks about Luffy and how his attraction works, looking at his idea about beauty. And when I tell you, this is one of the strongest indicators of his Arrow Ace coding, I am not even joking. So in this SBS, someone asked why Luffy referred to Alvida as a beauty, but hasn't referred to other pretty women around him as such. And Oda said, quote, "It's true that he indeed called Alvida a beauty. However, when normal people say a beauty, they mean it as a compliment. But in Luffy's case, it's just a classification. Luffy understands whether a face is pretty or not, but he doesn't care about that." End quote. Now, I've read and reread this a million times, because it makes me so happy, because this is exactly how I view beauty and attractiveness. It's not really something that matters to me at all. Like, I understand what's considered attractive, and I can recognize when someone is conventionally attractive, but just because I recognize that doesn't mean I'm attracted to them, you know? What really draws me in is a person's personality. Even if I know how attractive they are by textbook definition or societal standards, it goes right out the window, because that's just not what matters to me. What matters is how they act as a person. People just become infinitely more pretty and handsome to me once we've connected better. And if they're a decent human being that I jibe with pretty well, they're probably the prettiest person in the room to me. So I guess I experience attraction in a more aesthetic way. Because for me, attraction's not something that's sexual or romantic at all. I just come to appreciate people's appearances more as I become more fond of them. And I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense, but that's kind of how I experience attraction, so I just hope I explained it well and that it came across all right. But anyway, I've just gotta cut this off here, because I'm talking way too much on this topic. But really, it made me really happy to see this kind of thing in a character, and it makes Luffy a little more special to me, I guess. So yeah, anyway, I'll cut this here, so let's get back into the video. Oda basically said that Luffy would be completely uninterested in a naked body and wouldn't react unless he was feeding off of someone else's energy to do so. And while that's really the only instance I could find of Oda discussing the topic, that's a pretty strong implication. And that's not the only thing fueling my Arrow Ace Luffy propaganda either, because there's actually plenty of this coding for Luffy on screen. Luffy is a character that has endless amounts of platonic and familial love to give, but despite that, it's made fairly clear that he doesn't experience romantic love, and he doesn't really experience sexual attraction throughout the series either. The things he cares about are food, adventure, and his family. He doesn't care about boring things like sex and romance. He doesn't react when others are gaping over Nami and Robin's bodies. He doesn't react when he's on an island surrounded by beautiful women, all of which are basically crushing on him and fawning on him with attention. And the most blatant coding here, he doesn't react to the most beautiful woman in the world of One Piece. That woman is Boa Hancock, and every single man she interacts with in the series goes crazy for her. And she actually has an ability where she can turn people to stone through lust, which basically means that if someone is feeling lustful for her, she can turn them to stone. And since all men are crazy for her, this ability works on every single man she encounters in the series. But there's one person that this ability has no effect on. And that man is Luffy. And that's just the beginning, too. After saving her and showing her hope and kindness, Boa falls in love with Luffy. And every time she flirts or proposes or anything like that, he does not care. He flat out rejects her, and it's honestly so funny. Anyway, the main reason that I love the idea of Arrow Ace Luffy so much is because I can relate and see parts of myself in him. And as I said earlier, I'm asexual, and it's really hard to find ace characters, especially well-written ones that I can properly relate to. So when I started seeing the little hints that he might be ace, and then eventually that he might be aromantic as well, it made me really happy, and I got really attached to the idea. It became really special to me, so I did my best to explain it all here. It might be a little bit of a mess, but I hope you enjoyed the ramble anyway. The last character that I decided to draw for this video was Saiki from the Disastrous Life of Saiki K. And the story follows just that. The disastrous life of a teenage psychic who wants nothing more than to be normal and to be left alone. And he is possibly my favorite example of an Arrow Ace character. He's hilarious, and he's probably one of the most relatable characters I've ever stumbled across. But Saiki's another example of a character that's heavily coded, but not confirmed by the author. Which made me realize that Arrow Ace representation has like two main flavors. The first being canon, but not on screen. The second being not confirmed canon, but heavily coded into the character and on screen. It's rare we get to see anything else, which is really unfortunate, but alas, it is what we have been dealt. And it is what we see in this series. Saiki isn't canonically Arrow Ace, but he reflects the characteristics of aromantics and asexuals very well. So many of the things he says about love and attraction are coded this way, and a lot of people under the Arrow Ace umbrella have talked about how they see themselves in Saiki, and they really relate to what he says. For example, he has multiple episodes where he tries to dodge romance because he simply has no interest in it, and he sees people having a crush on him as an annoyance and something to be rid of. And he flat out says that he doesn't understand romance or its point at all. In another episode, he stated that his only one true love is coffee jelly, which falls into a pretty common joke amongst aromantics and asexuals that they really only love food. Another big thing here, one big pointer of this series is that he's the only one that doesn't care about or react to perfect pretty girl Teruhashi. Similarly to Luffy not reacting to Boa, the difference in reaction makes it stand out as significant. And the final example, on multiple occasions, he's mentioned a lack of interest in physical appearances and naked bodies. And those are just the obvious examples. If you watch the show and pay attention, you'll see all of the Arrow Ace coding stuffed in between everything. and it's great. I genuinely think that Saiki is an incredible example of aro ace representation, even though it's not stated to be canon. He checks all of the boxes. He loves the food or sweet more than anything. He shows no romantic or sexual attraction, and he actively avoids romance. And most importantly, he breaks a bad stereotype. The one where all asexual and aromantic people are mean-spirited bad people because they can't love you. Which, by the way, fails to take into account platonic love, but I'll move on from that. I'll ignore it. Saiki seems like he's that harsh, uncaring, monotonous person in the stereotype, but he breaks it because he actually really cares about his friends and family. And even though he complains and claims that he just wants to be left alone, he still does everything he can for them. He is incredible representation for aro ace people, and I wish he could be canon so people would stop denying it and see it for the wonderful thing that it is, and stop attacking people for just seeing themselves in Saiki and trying to find representation for themselves. Honestly, Saiki K is one of those shows that I've watched on repeat, and I love it so much. It's like a comfort show at this point, so I really hope I was able to shed some light on it for you guys and just ramble effectively so you understood where I was coming from, because it's just a great show. I'm so glad I got a chance to take a closer look at some aromantic and asexual characters. This video, it was really special to me because it's always so hard to find good ace and aro representation in media. And as an asexual, it's always been a bit sad that I couldn't find many characters that I connected with in that way and that I could see myself in properly. And I'm just happy that I got to do this video. It really was great just getting to do a little deep dive on these characters, so I hope you enjoyed that, because I know I did. Anyway, I am going to wrap this video up here, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you very soon for the next video. Bye bye, guys!